President Trump's so-called big beautiful bill of tax breaks and spending cuts is on its way back to the House, where some members are already signaling no. Today, the Senate pushed their version across the finish line by the narrowest of margins. Vice President J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote, pushing the measure past Democratic opposition and 3 Republican holdouts. The vote came after a record-breaking 25-hour amendment voting session in a process dubbed a vote-a-rama. The measure now heads back to the House for final approval, where it could face additional hurdles ahead of President Trump's July 4th deadline. Senate Democrats say this is not the end.
Our battle is not over. We're going to be fighting in July and August and throughout the year, reminding Americans when their hospitals close, when their health insurance is cut off, when their friends lose their jobs because clean energy has been so decimated. They'll remember. They'll remember. We will make sure of that.
Following the vote, Senate Majority Leader John Thune responded saying, quote, "This was an incredible victory for the American people." When asked after about the House passing it, he said, "I appreciate the narrow margins they have over there and the challenge the Speaker and his team have in front of them, but I think we gave them a really strong product." CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion has been following all of this. She joins us now. Nikole, thanks for being with us. As you know, it passed by one vote. Who were the Republican holdouts?
Well, I think it's important to point out that Vice President J.D. Vance was the deciding factor, as the Senate could only stand to lose 3 votes on the Republican side since they were trying to move this along party lines. And so in terms of those holdouts, we saw, of course, as I mentioned, J.D. Vance helped break this, but we saw a number of senators who were no's. That was Tom Tillis. Of course, he expressed his opposition over the weekend to this package. Rand Paul, who was concerned about increases to the debt limit. And then you also had Susan Collins, who had really expressed some concerns over the Medicaid provisions of this bill, much like Lisa Murkowski. Now, Lisa Murkowski ended up becoming a yes after we saw some changes made to the bill, some benefiting her state, but also most notably, they increased this rural hospital fund. It was in the bill at $25 billion. They increased that to $50 billion. And so while that is something that Susan Collins had pushed for, ultimately it still was not enough to get her to say yes. But for Murkowski, it was who pointed out that she had a number of rural hospitals in her state. So that is kind of some of the behind-the-scenes sausage making, but now it becomes Speaker Mike Johnson's problem as he has to try to wrangle all of his members to now back this Senate bill.
Now that it goes back to the House, what could be the sticking points with the version of the bill that just passed in the Senate?
Well, a couple of things. You know, obviously, there were some changes made from the House version of bill when it moved over here to the Senate. Some of those changes had to do with Medicaid, more specifically in the sense of dealing with some of the funding formulas for states. So that is of concern to some of the moderate Republicans, although now that there's some additional money for these rural hospitals, that might be enough to assuage them. But then you have these very fiscal hawks who don't want to see more spending added to this bill. For instance, someone like Chip Roy, who is very much a fiscal hawk. So from that standpoint, you know, he has expressed his opposition along with some other members of the conservative House Freedom Caucus. So again, it's just a very delicate balancing act on both sides of the Capitol.
All right, Nikole Killion, thank you so much.